Hello again team, it's Jess or JashiiCorrin and welcome back for another video. Today we are having our second monthly Q&A video. As we go through this one, the footage we mainly have in this video is of me doing some regular weekly planning from last week. Given that last month's Q&A was a tad on the longer side, by a lot, I've made a point to not re-answer any questions that I've already answered in other videos. For any of those repeat questions that I received in preparation for this video though, for instance questions specifically related to beginning a bullet journal or some things about teaching, in the description box below I've linked where I've answered those ones before, so do make sure to check those out if you're curious. Just like our last Q&A video, I've organised our questions into several categories, and our first category is all about my bullet journaling journey. Our first question for this one is, why did you start bullet journaling? To be completely honest, the reason I started bullet journaling is because they were pretty. At the time, I had an organisation system that was kind of working for me, so I didn't really start a bullet journal to get organised. That was just a really happy coincidence that is probably part of the reason why I stuck with bullet journaling. I'm notoriously bad at starting hobbies and then just never really continuing with them. Bullet journaling is one of the hobbies that I have been able to maintain for the longest. And that's because both of the enjoyment that I get for setting things up and, making things look nice, but also for the fact that it is a really useful tool in terms of my productivity and organisation. What is your favourite spread you've ever done? That is a tough question. After having a long think about it though, I'd probably have to say my June mood tracker from last year. I thought this one was really pretty both before and after it was filled in, and I loved getting to use my metallic watercolours. Are you proud of your bullet journal journey? I don't think proud is necessarily the word I'd use. I am pleased with it. I do find it enjoyable to look back at my previous journals and see how far I've come with them. So for instance, how much better my lettering's got, how I've been able to let go of making mistakes, in some respects, how I've pushed myself to try new things and find systems that work best for me. Our next category is all about my wider bullet journaling practice. And the first question we have in this one is, do you make all your weekly spreads at the beginning of a month, or do you set them up weekly? This is a very timely question because previously when I've used weekly spreads, I have set them up each week rather than once a month. But for February, because I wanted to do a video on Dutch Door weekly spread ideas, I did set these ones up all before the month started. And I've actually found that having had them set up has been quite helpful. So I think that something I might try for the next few months is actually having them all set up before the month starts. So probably setting them up a couple of days after I do my monthly plan with me. Previously I liked to set them up week by week because I might find some new inspiration, or I might have a certain element that I want to include. I might want to tweak things from the past week, having had tried them and had them not work or work really well, etc. But the benefit of having all of the weeklies set up at the start of the month is that it actually ends up freeing up some of my time. That whole idea of batching tasks together. How do you deal with collections that don't completely fill a page? So this one really depends on whether it's a long-term collection, which I can put in my long-term collections journal, or if it's a collection that I intend to put in my day-to-day bullet journal. For collections I put in my day-to-day bullet journal, I'll usually use the rest of the page for decoration or notes or something like that. In my long-term collections bullet journal though, I'm much more likely to leave the space blank just in case I want to come back to that collection and add more things in the future. It also depends on the type of collection, so if the collection is an ideas list, I'll certainly leave that open just in case I have more ideas in the future. But if the collection is something that I'm only going to be using for a short amount of time, say like a shopping list, a packing list, I'll usually find another use for any space that's left over. How do you store and use bullet journals that you've completed? All of my completed bullet journals go on the top shelf of my bookshelf. This includes all of my day-to-day bullet journals, any of what I call my R&D bullet journals, so these are the journals that I mainly use for making videos or for trialing layouts before I commit to them in my everyday bullet journal, and it's also where I keep any of my future journals, of which I have a few. The main reason that I like to keep my journals is 1, because there's a lot of memories in those, and also 2, because they're really useful for the videos I make here. how do you keep things/doodles consistent from page to page? I can totally understand why people struggle with this. This is something that I really struggled with when I first started bullet journaling. Also in part because I really just wanted to trial a bunch of different styles so I could find what worked for me. When I do want things on subsequent pages to be kept consistent though, typically what I'll do is go in with pencil first. That way I can sketch them out as many times as I want, get them to a consistent place, and then pen them in. A lot of the ways that I practice consistency in my layouts is with my monthly themes, which brings us to our next set of questions, which are all about bullet journal themes and inspiration. The first question in this one is, how do you choose your monthly themes? Mainly it just comes down to what I'm most excited about at the time. I do sometimes pick themes in advance. For instance, I know in theory what I want to do for October this year, so I've got a note about that one written in my journal so I don't forget. Also, when I'm on YouTube or Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, wherever, or at any point where inspiration strikes, I do have a list in my long-term collections journal for themes that I want to try one day. Something I also do when I'm picking my monthly themes is, for the most part, I kind of go against the grain. So I don't typically do Valentine's Day for February. I don't typically do seasonal themes because I'm in the Southern Hemisphere and the majority of my viewership is not. Another consideration that I make when picking my monthly theme is what my theme from the previous month was. Mainly because I do like to try and change up my colour palettes. So for instance, February is a yellow month, so I'm not going to use a yellow colour palette for March. Which means any themes that would centre around the colour yellow, probably not going to do those. How do you make your theme cohesive throughout the month? This I like to talk about a lot in my monthly plan with me's, but some things that I like to do are 1. Picking a colour palette. If you use the same range of colours for all of your spreads, they just tie together a lot better. 2. I'll typically pick some kind of a header or a font that I'll use consistently throughout all the pages. 3. I'll also pick some key doodles that I'll use consistently throughout all the pages, if I am using doodles that is. But what's probably also important, 4, I try and make my theme flexible enough that I'm not going to get bored with it. I found that when I first started doing themes, I'd usually get to like the second weekly of the month and be like, nah, I'm over it, I'm going to do something else. Which meant that the end of the month, or the last couple of weeklies, usually wouldn't tie together so well with the rest of the month. Nowadays I'm a lot better at being able to stick with one theme for the entire month. What's your go-to theme when you have zero inspiration? Probably anything with just repeating patterns and Zentangles. That's kind of what happened for January last year because the theme I wanted to do, I couldn't really execute the way that I had it in my head. I'm going to come back to that theme one day, but still don't think I have the skill set for it. So yes, the go-to is patterns. Where do you get your inspiration? Inspiration for themes mainly comes from Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube. But for new page ideas and new designs of pages, that's mainly from Facebook. The majority of stuff you really see on Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube is all the kind of aesthetic stuff. But if you're looking for really cool, novel, functional ways of using a bullet journal, I find that the Facebook groups are way better for that. Our next category I've titled Personal Questions. They're not like personal, but they're just about me in general. How do you find the time to teach, lesson plan, and create such a beautiful bullet journal? First of all, thank you to the person who left this question, that's very sweet of you to say. But also, have you ever watched any of my vlogs? There's a very good reason why I complain about being tired so often. I will say though, especially where teaching and lesson planning are involved, I do have a lot of good resources from my school, from other people in my department that I can kind of rely on to help ease the load on that one. Otherwise, it's very much just a sacrificing in other areas of my life. At the point of doing this voice recording, for instance, it's 11:52. I really should be in bed. What's your favourite colour? That would be purple, second favourite colour being green. Why did you move from Australia to New Zealand? So my family and I moved from Melbourne, Australia to Wellington, New Zealand back when I was in high school. So at the end of my third to last year of high school. That was because my dad was getting a new job and he could either pick between New Zealand or I think it was India or Indonesia or Thailand. I don't know, somewhere around there. I know that's a pretty big area, but somewhere around there. So we went with New Zealand because it was a little closer to home. Originally we were only going to be staying for 2 years, but then my dad got made redundant, got a new job, which didn't have that whole 2-year contract thing, and yeah, then I just stayed. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live? I don't know, it's hard to say because I really like Melbourne, but I also really like Wellington. If there could be a place with kind of like a climate that's in between Wellington and Melbourne's, but was the size of Wellington, and also still had all of my friends near, and also had my favourite sushi shop. Yeah, I would live there, but I don't know where that place is. What was your best birthday ever like? I feel like that's a hard question because I probably don't remember enough of any of my birthdays to give an honest opinion. The first one that came to mind though was my 23rd birthday, where we went to a bar called Alice. That was kind of like a little back alley bar in Wellington, and they had Alice in Wonderland themed cocktails. That one was fun. My 21st was pretty good too, but I'm hoping that I can plan something really cool for my 30th. Our next category was questions about Vogel, and the first one was, how did you meet Vogel and how long have you known each other? So I met Vogel when I first came to New Zealand, like on my 2nd or 3rd day of being at our high school. That was back in 2008, so that's like 13 years ago? We were in the same biology class as each other. Why is Vogel called Vogel? Do you know it means bird? Yes, I do know it means bird. But here in New Zealand, Vogel's is a brand of bread. The reason that I call Vaughn Vogel is because in our final year of high school, he was in a peer supporting program, and the younger students he was responsible for thought it would be funny to call him Vogel, and I also thought it was funny, so it kind of stuck. I very rarely call him Vaughn now, unless he's in trouble. The next category I've decided to call content creator, because I wasn't really too sure what to call it, but the first question we had here was, would you ever consider selling a product? In particular, the person who asked this question mentioned stickers, and previously I had wanted to make stickers, but now I'm not too sure. It honestly just seems like a hell of a lot of work, and I think I'd prefer to just focus on making printables for my Patreon instead. Also, then you don't have to rely on a mailing system, because you just get the file, print it out and stick it in. In my previous Q&A though, I did talk about wanting to make a goal planner, and I still want to do that, and I still haven't taken any steps towards doing that. I do currently sell my Excel spending trackers, though those aren't physical products, they are digital. But yeah, to answer your question, I would consider selling a product. Would you ever sell the Excel markbook templates for teachers? Yes, I would certainly sell those. I just need to figure out how best to sell a digital product. At the moment, the way I sell my Excel spending trackers is people hit me up on Facebook. I send them the information about the available spending trackers and what each of them include. They tell me which one they'd like to purchase, I send them a request via PayPal. They send me the funds, I send them the file. It's all very involved, so I'd like to streamline that process, actually set up some kind of an online store, so it was a little bit more instantaneous, didn't require quite as much back and forth. But at this stage, I haven't really looked into that fully. If anybody did want to buy one of my Excel markbook templates though, just do hit me up on Facebook and I'm sure we can sort something out. Would you ever consider becoming a full-time YouTuber and quit teaching? Yes, but given the fact that I'm used to a certain amount of income, my YouTubing / Patreon / whatever else would have to get to a certain level before I would genuinely consider it. This leads us into our next category though, which is YouTube in particular. Why did you start a YouTube? This is a question I've got a couple of times, and I know I said I wasn't going to repeat questions that I've already answered, but I did want to put this one in here just because in a couple of weeks I'm going to have a video coming out about why I started a YouTube, what that process kind of looked like. If that's something you'd be interested in seeing, do make sure to watch out for that one. What does your editing process look like? Honestly, it looks like a mess. It also really depends on what kind of a video. So for instance, what was involved in this video was taking the footage into my editing software, trimming out any of the fluff or segments where I wasn't really doing anything, trimming the ends so that we start and stop at the right points, recording my voiceover, which at this point is at 36 minutes long because I like to say things multiple times over so they actually sound the way I want them to. Then once I've recorded my voiceover, I trim out all of the parts that I don't want in there anymore. For instance, the first 7 times I say things so that I can just keep the 8th time I say it. Then making sure that the length of my voiceover lines up with the amount of footage I have and vice versa. I then also need to check if I need to add any B-roll, so things like title cards, things like pictures of my journal, other little video segments, that kind of stuff. So if I need to make any Photoshop files, take any pictures, take more videos, I'll go do that. Then put all of those into the videos at the right points. At some point during that process, I also need to make sure if there are any transitions I want, I put the transitions in. If I have any overlays, I need to make sure to put those in. If I want any sound effects, I need to put the sound effects in. I'd like to say it was a more linear process, but really it's just doing bits and pieces wherever I deem it necessary. But once I've done all of that stuff, I can then hit export and hope for the best. Typically I don't watch my videos the whole way through before I export, which sometimes has negative consequences, but most of the time it's okay because I've done so much re-watching of the footage anyways. That process probably sounds like a bit of a mess, because it kinda is. How long does an average video take to edit? It's kind of tricky to say because it really depends a lot on what kind of a video I'm doing, how long the footage of the video is, how much B-roll I want to use, a bunch of other stuff. It's not uncommon for a larger video to take me pretty much a full day to edit though. And if a video has a lot of live talking, so for instance no voiceover work, the editing process is typically a lot less. So for my vlogs for instance, those are the ones where typically the editing is the shortest. I have previously been able to fully edit a vlog in about 2 hours. What is your favourite and least favourite part about the content creation process? I'm limiting this one to YouTube rather than all content creation, and it certainly depends on when you ask me, but at the moment, one of my favourite things is coming up with ideas for videos. And I wouldn't really say there's a part that I, truly dislike. You could argue this one isn't really about the creation process, but I'm going to include it because it's literally the only thing I can think of that I even slightly dislike. But I don't like it when I put a lot of effort into a video and I feel really good about it and I upload it and then it doesn't do well. I'm like, no, my baby, why don't they like you? That's always kind of a bummer. And I know not every video I make is going to be amazing, but that's probably still my least favorite thing. Would you ever consider a collaboration video with your favorite bullet journaler? Yes, I would. I am hoping to do a collab this year. That's actually one of the things on my 101 things list, so hoping that can happen. Have any of your students come across your channel? If so, how did they react? So typically when students find my YouTube channel, it's because another student has told them about it. So I've never really had a student, or at least one that I can remember, who's just found it by accident. It's mainly because they were pointed in that direction by somebody else. Typically they're initially pretty excited about it though. They're usually pretty impressed by the subscriber base we have here, but that excitement's usually pretty short-lived and then we get on with other stuff. Question of the day for you guys though, and throwing back to one of the earlier ones in this video, what do you do with your bullet journals when you're finished with them? Do you hold on to them, ever go back and read through them or look at them? Or do you dispose of them in some way? Recycle, burn, whatever it is people do with journals if they don't keep them. Let us know in the comments below. Do be sure to check out the links in the description box for any of those repeat questions I was given. And of course, if you have a question for next month's Q&A, I would love to hear about that too. As always team, thank you for watching. If you liked today's video, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to my channel for more on planning, productivity, and personal development. Until next time, bye!